There are some changes in life that happen so gradually, you don't notice them until something interrupts the pattern you've settled into. For me, it was a staycation that never quite became the break that we had planned. I'd spent weeks in Northern Ireland supporting my parents, and then I came home to Frankfurt looking forward to finally exploring more of the area with Dennis. Instead, I became ill. Then Dennis picked up a couple of minor injuries. And before too long, we were spending far more time at home than either of us had wanted or expected. At first, I just assumed we'd go another day, or when the weather had cooled down, or when he felt better. Then I caught myself thinking something that surprised me. If Dennis finds another job soon, Frankfurt could become another place we just used to live. There are forests, walking trails, and little towns around us that I've been meaning to visit. And I suddenly realized I was quietly waiting for someone else's availability before experiencing a place I was already living in. It wasn't really about the walking. It made me wonder what had changed in me. Years ago, when we lived in Switzerland, I used to walk alone for hours. I'd catch a train somewhere, follow the yellow walking signs through forests and countryside, and finish in a completely different town. It took me a while to build up that confidence. However, once I had it, walking alone just became part of my everyday life. And then we moved to Salzburg. One day, shortly moved to Salzburg, I followed a route I'd expected to be really straightforward, only to discover that the sign simply disappeared. I remember standing there thinking, I actually don't know where to go from here. Around the same time, an older memory resurfaced from my Duke of Edinburgh Award days as a teenager, when I confidently suggested a route over a mountain without even realizing what I'd done. It's funny how one small experience can stay quietly in the background for years without you fully appreciating its influence. None of that stopped me walking. It simply meant Dennis naturally became the navigator. He was more confident with maps, more confident with the technology. So whenever we walked together, he checked the route, and I followed. It wasn't a decision either of us consciously made. It was simply what worked. The interesting part is that something can work perfectly well and still slowly change you. I never thought of myself as dependent. I was still running my business, traveling between countries on my own, supporting my parents, managing Crohn's disease, organizing everyday life. From the outside and even to myself, I was still completely independent. And yet one small corner of my life had quietly become organized around whether Dennis was available to come with me or not. That's not unusual. Sometimes one person naturally becomes the one who drives, or speaks the language, or deals with the officials, or makes the bookings, or navigates. It's rarely because the other person can't do those things. It's simply easier to let the person with more confidence continue doing them. The arrangement makes sense. Until one day you realize you've stopped thinking of yourself as someone who does that thing. That recognition felt surprisingly emotional for me because it wasn't really about finding my way around a walking route. It was about recognizing that confidence can become smaller without disappearing completely. It can simply become less practiced. I still wanted to explore cities with Dennis. I still wanted those shared experiences. This was never about proving I could do everything on my own. Walking felt different because walking had always been mine. So I decided to begin again. Not because I suddenly trusted every map app, not because I knew I wouldn't get lost, and certainly not because I no longer wanted Dennis beside me. I simply reached the point where waiting was costing me more than uncertainty. I think that's true in other parts of life as well. Sometimes we're not waiting because we truly have to. We're waiting because a pattern has subtly developed over time and we've stopped questioning it. That's something that sometimes comes into my personal support sessions with women, not because someone needs to become completely independent, rather because they've started noticing one small part of themselves has gradually become organized around someone else's confidence, availability, or decisions. And they want to understand what that shift has meant for them. If you'd like to explore this idea a little further, I've written about my experience in this week's accompanying blog post, where I share more of the story behind what led me to that first solo walk. Sometimes it isn't one big decision that changes us. Sometimes it's simply recognizing the subtle and quiet patterns we've been living inside without ever noticing they were there.